I was grabbing coffee with a friend of mine the other day. Let's call him James. He's the absolute definition of a catch, by every standard we're taught in polite society. Stable career, emotionally available, incredibly patient. He just spent the last few months helping his girlfriend prepare for grad school, even paying for her application fees and driving her to the exam center himself.
Wow. So really supportive partner.
The best. But there he was, sitting across from me, just staring blankly at this cold latte, looking completely defeated. He tells me she had just packed her bags.
Oh, no.
And the kicker wasn't that she wanted to be alone to find herself or anything like that. She left him for a guy she met at a local dive bar, a bartender with a motorcycle, a spotty employment history, and a criminal record.
The classic bad boy archetype.
Exactly. And James just holds up his phone, showing me the guy's profile, and he's just baffled. He kept repeating the same phrase, almost like desperate for an answer. Make it make sense. I did everything right.
I can feel the confusion in that.
That moment, seeing a man who offers stability and just genuine devotion get traded in for unpredictability and danger, it creates this tension that it's genuinely uncomfortable to witness. It feels like a glitch in the matrix.
It does.
Logic dictates she should choose the provider, the safety, the nice guy. But watching James try to rationalize why his stability lost out to another man's chaos, I realized he was trying to solve a biological equation with modern social logic.
Yes.
He thought attraction was a choice, a negotiation of virtues. He didn't realize he was fighting against a piece of survival software that hasn't been updated since the Stone Age.
And that right there is the core conflict that we have to unpack today.
Exactly.
You're describing someone trying to navigate these deeply programmed, unconscious behavioral patterns of attraction using only conscious 21st century social reasoning.
He's using the wrong map.
Completely the wrong map. James is looking at a logical checklist, while his girlfriend was responding to a primal genetic selection process. The fundamental question isn't whether James was a good person or a virtuous partner. The question is whether his traits were activating her ancient, deep-seated survival signals.
Okay, let's unpack this. This deep dive is about hunting for the genetic code behind that universal sense of confusion when attraction just defies logic. We are investigating the evolutionary blueprints, the neurobiological mechanisms, and the empirical data that explain why mate selection, particularly female mate selection, often appears to be deeply instinctual and, to the modern mind, irrational.
Our mission is to move past the narratives we tell ourselves and look squarely at the data that governs behavior.
So where do we start?
We'll begin with the ancient genetic groundwork, Darwinian sexual selection, to establish the rules of the game.
Okay.
Then we'll move inward, examining the neurobiology of dual processing, which reveals the physical mechanism for this conscious versus unconscious conflict.
And finally,
we're going to quantify these instincts using vast amounts of data pulled directly from modern digital dating platforms, which act as a perfect high-volume laboratory for observing human desire.
let's start where any discussion of instinct has to begin, which is millions of years ago with Charles Darwin.
Right.
We're all familiar with natural selection, the famous concept of survival of the fittest and the brutal fight against the environment. But Darwin himself became dissatisfied with natural selection as the sole driver for evolutionary change.
Yeah, he found it incomplete.
Incomplete, exactly, especially when looking at these highly flamboyant, non-survival enhancing traits, like a peacock's tail.
The peacock's tail is the perfect example. It's beautiful, but it's also heavy. It makes you a target for predators. It makes no sense from a pure survival standpoint.
So it's a liability.
It's a huge liability, and that is precisely why sexual selection became necessary as a distinct concept. It's not about surviving a drought or escaping a predator. It's about increasing reproductive success.
Okay, so it's a different kind of fitness.
It's a different game entirely. He noted that selection could happen even if a trait was detrimental to survival, as long as it conferred an advantage in attracting a mate. He defined two closely related processes within this framework that govern who partners with whom.
The first being intersexual selection.
Yes, intersexual selection is the competition between members of the same sex for direct access to mates.
So male-on-male competition.
Exactly. Think of stags locking antlers, or in the modern human context, the economic, social, and physical competition between men like James, the stable guy, and the bartender, the chaos agent, for the attention of a woman. It's fundamentally about securing the limited resource.
And the second type of selection, which I think is the most critical component for understanding James's dilemma, is intersexual selection.
Correct. Intersexual selection is the choice made by members of one sex, and this is almost universally the female sex, across nearly all species where parental investment is unequal.
So female choice.
It's female choice. And this embraces the core evolutionary notion that women represent the sex that allocates the overwhelmingly greater biological effort to parental investment.
What do you mean by that exactly?
Well, just the biological reality, right? Internal gestation, lactation. These are huge investments of time and resources that are unique to the female.
Okay.
That reality fundamentally makes women the limited reproductive resource for men. Therefore, the evolutionary dynamic is clear and unavoidable. Men compete for access to women, and women make the selection based on indicators of successful resource provision and genetic quality.
And that structure is what drives the traits that become attractive over generations.
Correctly. It's the filter through which everything passes.
So if the female is the selector, her choice needs to maximize the safety and resources available to her offspring.
That's the evolutionary logic.
This brings us directly to the concept of hypergamy. The bold claim here, backed by this evolutionary structure, is that hypergamy, this deep-seated instinctual drive to seek a partner of higher status, higher competence, or greater resources, is an ancient, hardwired piece of survival software.
And not, as it's often framed, about modern personal greed.
Right. It's a biological imperative.
You have to view it through the lens of maximizing genetic return on investment. Hypergamy is a genetic decision designed to minimize risk for the vulnerable offspring.
Let's stick with your analogy, a lioness choosing the strongest lion in the pride.
Perfect. She is making a purely transactional choice in evolutionary terms.
What's the transaction?
She is mating with the strongest, highest status male because that choice gives her cubs the highest probability of survival to reproductive age, protection from rivals, and access to the best hunting grounds. She is selecting for the winner phenotype.
And in the modern environment, we aren't hunting mammoths and we aren't, fighting rival tribes with spears. So what are the modern proxies for that strength, that resource acquisition, and high social status that the primal brain registers?
That's the key question. Evolutionary psychology findings consistently point to cues that signal stability and, more importantly, competence in acquiring resources within the social structure.
Like what? What are we looking for?
These signals include ambition, demonstrated intelligence, higher educational attainment, and often older age.
Why older age?
Well, ambition and intelligence signal problem-solving ability and potential for future success. Older age often signals established social status, a proven track record of resource accumulation, and the ability to survive in a competitive environment, all strong proxies for past survival traits.
So it's about a proven track record.
Exactly. What's important to remember is that the initial attraction system doesn't differentiate between good status and bad status. It only registers high status or high competence.
Okay, that is a critical point. So the chaos of the bartender, the unpredictability, the slightly dangerous edge, that might actually be triggering an unconscious reaction that says,
what does it say?
This man is successfully operating outside the normal social structure. He is dominant. He is a survivor, a high-risk, high-reward bet.
It's the primal brain registering a high level of confidence, control, or competence in navigating his world, regardless of how detrimental that world might appear to the rational mind.
He might be a successful outlier.
He might be. That dominance, even if it manifests as arrogance or abrasiveness, can be mistakenly interpreted by that ancient system as a winner phenotype, a potent signal for genetic viability.
This evolutionary view is compelling because it relies on, fixed biological realities. However, we have to look at the contrasting theory, the sociocultural counter-narrative.
I have to.
Which suggests that social structure, not just biology, heavily influences and perhaps even overrides these primal mate preferences.
That's a crucial counterpoint. The sociocultural perspective posits that if mate preferences were purely biological, they should remain fixed regardless of economic conditions or societal shifts.
They should be static.
They should be. So they argue that as social roles and economic realities change, preferences must shift. This is best exemplified by the structural powerless hypothesis.
which claims that as women gain socioeconomic power, their reliance on male resources should decline.
Precisely. The premise is that as women gain greater personal access to economic resources through high-status education and successful careers, the fundamental need for seeking men's economic resources should diminish substantially.
It makes perfect sense. If a woman is highly educated and financially independent, why would she prioritize a man's income in her selection criteria?
Logically, she shouldn't. And studies of highly successful women often show that their stated preferences seem to validate this view.
The key word there being stated.
Exactly. When high-achieving women were asked to rank desired attributes in a long-term mate, the attribute I-income financial provider consistently ranked quite low, for instance, coming in 8th out of 9 listed attributes in one key study.
So they're consciously saying it's not important.
They're consciously telling researchers that stability and financial prospects are not their primary focus.
This stated deprioritization of income, it seems like a huge endorsement for the sociocultural perspective.
It does on the surface, and there is a historical trend reinforcing this. When researchers track the ranking of good financial prospects across studies conducted over several decades, like 1973, 1986, 2013, the ranking showed a slight progressive decrease.
So it is changing over time.
It suggests that as women's economic opportunities grow, the conscious ranking of financial prospects appears to diminish. However, this raises the central tension we are exploring.
Which is,
does a person's consciously articulated preference, their rational mind speaking, actually predict their attraction and subsequent choice, or is it merely the ideal they wish to project, which is then overridden by instinct?
that is the perfect segue. James's girlfriend may have genuinely believed she didn't need or want a provider, but if she ended up with the chaotic bartender, we have to look inside the system to see why her actual behavior contradicted her conscious belief.
To understand that internal conflict, we must look at the brain's architecture. Modern neuroscience describes the brain using a dual processing system.
Okay.
It's essentially two parallel routes to action running simultaneously, tuned to different timescales and different evolutionary goals.
The two competing operating systems, if you will.
Exactly. First, you have the implicit gene-specified goal route. This is the ancient foundational system. It operates on emotional processes. It's fast, automatic, and often inaccessible to conscious inspection.
So the gut feeling.
The gut feeling. Its rewards and punishers are specified by our genes to influence behavior in ways that increase reproductive success and overall fitness. It is the fundamental Darwinian way we assign emotional and survival value to the world.
The Stone Age survival software we talked about earlier.
Precisely. And then you have the second system, the reasoning, rational route. This is the evolutionarily newer, more sophisticated system, the conscious mind.
What does it do?
It handles complex, multi-step problems, planning for the future, language, and moral reasoning. This is the system that tells James's girlfriend, objectively, you should choose the kind, stable man who supports your grad school dreams.
So the reason for the irrationality, the cognitive dissonance, is that the emotional implicit system is running on goals designed for the Pleistocene, finding the highest quality hunter-protector. Right. While the rational system is trying to operate based on modern, conscious, civilized values like kindness and reciprocity.
They are often in direct conflict. The core struggle means that what the rational mind wants, stability, kindness, future planning, often gets overridden or, at the very least, complicated by what the primal brain registers as high value, high status, or genetically dominant.
So how does the brain actually assign this value? What's the neurobiological mechanism behind that involuntary jolt of attraction when someone encounters a high-status personality like the bartender?
That value assignment is routed through the brain's reward systems, which evolution has tuned meticulously over millions of years.
Okay.
The first cortical area where affective value, including aesthetic value and attraction, is made explicit in the neural representation is a critical area known as the orbitofrontal cortex, or OFC.
The OFC, so this is like the brain's valuation center.
You can think of it that way. The OFC acts as a crucial moment-by-moment decoder of stimulus value. Is this good for me? Is this bad for me? Should I approach or avoid?
So when James's girlfriend encountered the abrasive, dominant bartender, what was her OFC registering?
Well, the brain is optimized for speed in assessing status. In the ancestral environment, the man who could command the room, exhibit physical dominance, or successfully win a conflict was immediately perceived as a survivor and a winner.
Makes sense.
Evolution tuned the OFC to find these dominant signals rewarding. because they indicated a better chance of protection and resource acquisition for potential offspring.
And here's the glitch.
Here's the glitch. The neurobiological glitch occurs because the OFC registers modern dominance, cues like arrogance, a certain abrasiveness, or even the disregard for social rules, and often mistakes these for ancestral competence and safety.
Wow.
This triggers an involuntary, deep neurobiological response, manifesting as that magnetic pull or physical excitement. The primal brain is not optimizing for kindness. It's optimizing for genetic success.
It's incredible how the brain is essentially just reading the outward signal, the confidence, the dominance, and applying this million-year-old interpretation that says high status, high value approach.
And that attraction is physical. It's happening below conscious thought. But this leads to the next question. Can the reasoning part of the brain fight back against this primal reward signal?
Can consciousness change the way we feel?
That's the question. We know from life experience that our feelings can sometimes change based on new information.
Sure.
Absolutely. The rational system, which relies on language, planning, and verbal descriptions, does have a top-down modulatory influence on the OFC.
Meaning it can regulate it.
It can. This means conscious thought and reflection can influence those initial emotional and aesthetic feelings. If you consciously reframe or contextualize a man's abrasiveness as, say, immaturity, the rational system can send signals to the OFC to reduce the perceived value of that trait.
But the first hit is still there.
The initial jolt, the implicit attraction, is often still dictated by the default ancient setting. The rational mind has to consciously and continuously intervene to correct the genetic software.
That explains the perpetual tension. And the depth of this ancient programming is, it's further demonstrated by attraction cues that are entirely unconscious.
Right.
Supporting the idea that the body is truly fighting a biological ghost.
Indeed. Attraction is frequently shaped by subtle, deep-seated biological mechanisms that consciously articulated preferences cannot easily override. These are the nonverbal signals that communicate genetic fitness.
What are some of the most surprising examples of these unconscious cues operating beneath the surface?
One of the clearest, though perhaps subtler examples, relates to concealed ovulation in human females.
Okay.
While we don't display overt signs like many primates, there is strong evidence suggesting men may detect cues that increase a woman's desirability during her fertile window. This is pure biological ghosting.
What specifically are the men detecting? It's not visual, right?
It's a combination of things. We're talking about physiological and pheromonal cues. For example, during the fertile follicular phase, women may exhibit a very slight increase in body temperature, sometimes described as giving off a warm glow of vascularized skin.
A literal glow.
A literal glow. Men may unconsciously find this subtle visual cue attractive, a proxy for health and youth.
And the pheromonal side.
More profoundly, research involving T-shirts worn by women during different phases of their menstrual cycle demonstrated a pheromonal effect.
The famous T-shirt study.
That's the one. Men who rated the odors from T-shirts worn during the fertile phase judged those odors as significantly more pleasant and, crucially, sexier compared to the same women's T-shirts worn during the non-fertile luteal phase.
That truly bypasses the conscious mind entirely. You are selecting based on an odor that indicates current fertility.
And we can go even deeper into immunological compatibility.
How so?
Think about the major histocompatibility complex, or MHC genes. These genes are crucial for the immune system, and diversity in MHC genes is highly evolutionarily advantageous for offspring.
Because it leads to children with a much broader and stronger immune system.
Exactly. Research suggests that attraction, again based on body odor preference, is tied directly to these MHC genes. We are unconsciously attracted to mates who smell genetically dissimilar to us, ensuring our offspring get the best possible immune protection.
So James's girlfriend, despite her conscious desire for stability, might have been biologically receiving this complex cocktail of signals from the bartender dominance cues, activating her OFC, and potentially unconscious pheromonal or genetic compatibility signals.
Whole suite of them.
That James, the stable, kind partner, simply wasn't generating. This conflict is the perfect setup for the high-pressure environment of digital dating, where these instincts are just quantified.
We've established the ancient blueprint and the neurobiological conflict. Now, let's see what happens when you take that ancient operating system and plug it into a global database of millions of potential mates.
We move from the ancestral environment to the digital savanna.
To the digital savanna of dating platforms, which provides the hard data we need.
The digital environment doesn't create these instincts. But it acts as a massive amplifier and accelerator for them.
How so?
Because it removes almost all search friction. In the offline world, choice is limited by who happens to be in your local bar or social circle. Online, the choice set is theoretically infinite.
And that environment accelerates hypergamous strategies precisely because the perceived supply is unlimited. We start seeing intense competition and hyperselectivity immediately in the platform analytics.
Let's get to the data.
Look at the data from the Tinder economy. Studies found that the top 78% of women are focusing their attention on only the top 20% of men.
Let's pause on that 7-8-20 split for a second. That means almost 4 out of every 5 women in that marketplace are actively competing for the same 1/5 of the male population.
Yes.
That is a brutal power law distribution that dictates the reality of the dating world.
It creates an intense concentration of attention at the apex of male desirability. And this phenomenon was corroborated by data from other platforms like Hinge.
What did Hinge find?
Hinge's data showed that the absolute elite, the top 1% of men, received over 16% of all likes on the platform.
The top 1% gets 1/6 of all the attention.
The demand is hyper-concentrated at the high end.
This also explains the infamous statistic from OkCupid's research, where women rate 80% of men as below average in attractiveness.
Correct. It sounds mathematically impossible, but it's not. The illusion of infinite choice fundamentally changes the subjective standard of what is acceptable.
Your standards just keep going up.
Your standards go up. Users, particularly women, become hyper-selective. They aggressively narrow their search parameters, holding out for a perceived perfect match that aligns with every primal trigger of status, looks, and desirability. They apply a scarcity strategy to an abundance environment, which only raises the threshold for what constitutes an acceptable partner.
So let's get into the hard numbers that quantify the specific markers of hypergamy in this environment. How do income and looks correlate with success?
The correlations are incredibly strong, and they reveal a clear gender asymmetry regarding what the market values. We can use the metric of expected first contact emails received as a proxy for success.
Okay.
For men, income is a powerful differentiator. Below about $50,000 annually, income has no discernible effect. However, for every dollar earned above that, success improves monotonically.
How dramatic is the reward for being at the very top of that resource pyramid?
It's massive. Men in the highest reported income bracket, those earning over $250,000 annually, see a 151% increase in expected first contacts compared to men with incomes below $50,000.
And for women?
Now, contrast that with the women's data. Their success is only marginally related to their income. Higher incomes for women do not translate into significantly higher desirability to men.
So it's a one-way street.
It reinforces the evolutionary asymmetry we discussed earlier. Men, in the aggregate, do not assign high utility or selection weight to a partner's financial prospects.
It's the ultimate confirmation that resources are a male selection metric, but not a female selection metric in this environment. What about physical characteristics, like looks?
Physical attractiveness is crucial for both genders, but how it plays out is different. Attractiveness ratings explain 30% of the outcome variability for women, compared to 18% for men.
But there's a catch for men, isn't there?
There is. The data reveals the profound effect of concentration at the top. For men, what researchers termed the male superstar effect.
The superstar effect.
Men in the top 5% of looks ratings received almost twice as many first contacts as men in the next 5%. This means female attention is highly stratified, funneling towards the aesthetically elite.
And we can look even deeper into specific physical attributes, height and body mass index, to see our deep-seated evolutionary preferences revealed.
Height preferences show a powerful, quantifiable effect. Women consistently show a clear preference for tall men.
How clear?
Men in the 6'3" to 6'4" range received 65% more first contact emails than men in the 5'7" to 5'8" range.
And there's a penalty for tall women.
There is. A woman who is 6'3" received 42% fewer emails than the optimal height range, which research identified as around 5'5".
And the BMI data, this offers a brutal summation of our collective unconscious preferences.
It highlights the stark asymmetry in what signals health and fertility versus what signals protection and resource holding.
So what's the optimal number?
It's a profound asymmetry. The optimal BMI for men, where success peaks, is around 27.
Which is?
According to standard definitions, this is considered slightly overweight. It aligns with a visual perception of robust strength, power, the ability to provision.
And for women?
For women, the optimal BMI is dramatically lower, around 17.
17? That's clinically underweight.
It is. It aligns with a fashion supermodel figure. A woman with a BMI of 17 received a staggering 90% boost in contacts compared to a woman with a BMI of 25.
Wait, so let me get this straight. Biologically, men are rewarded for looking like a powerful linebacker or a strongman, demonstrating resource acquisition ability.
Yes.
And women are rewarded for looking like they model high fashion. That contrast is shocking and deeply rooted in evolutionary cues about youthful fertility and resource competence.
And these numbers are not derived from stated preferences. They're revealed instincts demonstrated by who people actually message, like, and reply to.
Okay, but where the data becomes most provocative is when we look at ethnicity preferences.
Right.
This is where the tension between modern values and primal instinct is highly quantifiable.
Dating platforms often allow users to state their preference for same-race matching, and the data showed that women state this preference much more frequently than men.
What were the numbers?
It was 38% of women stated this preference versus 18% of men. But the true quantifiable discrimination comes out in the regression analysis.
Which is crucial because
it controls for all other observable attributes like income and education. And researchers found members of all 4 major ethnic groups showed that they statistically discriminate against users of different ethnicities.
And women demonstrated a stronger degree of this discrimination than men did.
To illustrate the magnitude, researchers calculated the cost of ethnicity.
Okay, what is that?
This is the additional income needed for a non-white man to achieve the exact same success rate, the same number of expected first contacts, with a white woman as a white man of median income. This calculation strips away the rational variable.
And the resulting economic exchange rates were staggering.
They were. For equal success with a white woman, an African-American man needed to earn $154,000 in additional annual income.
An extra $154,000.
And an Asian man needed $247,000 in additional annual income, all to compensate for the ethnic preference factor, even after controlling for their education and current income.
$247,000 in extra income just to offset the influence of race preference. That completely dwarfs the influence of education or occupation.
It does.
It provides the ultimate powerful evidence that these deep-seated, quantifiable instincts are overriding massive economic and rational considerations.
It confirms that even in the most technologically advanced matching system designed for rational choice, deep-seated, often unconscious biological preferences or aversion to outgroup traits are still running the show and trumping almost all modern considerations.
The digital data allows us to transition directly into this concept of trade-offs, where we can calculate the actual economic exchange rate for attraction. The market has priced these genetic markers.
This is the quantifiable truth behind the evolutionary strategy. You can put a dollar figure on traits considered genetically beneficial.
So let's look at looks again.
Okay. A man who was in the bottom decile of looks needed an astonishing $186,000 in additional annual income just to achieve the same success rate as a median income man who's in the top looks decile.
You were saying that lacking perceived physical attractiveness carries the same economic burden as needing to acquire an additional nearly $200,000 in annual salary.
That's what the market behavior says.
That redefines what success means in the dating market.
And height shows an even steeper penalty, revealing its strength as a primal indicator of status and protection.
What's the cost of being short?
A man who's only 5'2" tall needed $269,000 in additional annual income to compensate for his height relative to a median height man who is around 5'11.5".
Wow.
These calculations demonstrate that genetic markers, the implicit signals of fitness, carry an immense quantifiable economic premium that must be overcome with resources, which are the modern proxy for the ability to provide safety and success.
What's equally revealing is the asymmetry in these trade-offs, which brings us back to the female choice mechanism. Does a high-earning woman get the same compensation benefit for average looks or non-preferred ethnicity?
And that is the core, unyielding asymmetry in the marketplace.
There's no trade-off.
No. The data confirms that women generally cannot compensate for poor looks or non-preferred ethnicity with higher income. Men's marginal utility from female income is relatively flat, and their preferences are strongly concentrated on physical traits, youth, and attractiveness cues.
So there's no income level she can reach to make up for it.
If a woman is in the 9th decile of looks, there is virtually no amount of additional income she can earn that would make her as attractive to men as a woman in the top decile. The currency of exchange is fundamentally different for men and women, reflecting their differing evolutionary pressures.
This asymmetry brings us back to the woman caught between James and the bartender. She is caught in the painful grip of cognitive dissonance.
The psychological tension between the two systems.
Exactly. The dissonance is painful because it's a conflict between two deeply held but opposing biological programs.
It's a war inside your own head.
It is. Her conscious mind, the rational route, genuinely desires the kind, stable partner, the James, who offers security and investment.
Right.
But her unconscious mind, the implicit gene-specified route, feels a powerful, involuntary jolt of attraction and a craving for the excitement and dominance cues of the unpredictable high-risk partner, the bartender.
This is why so many people feel that sense of being starving for something I can't name.
Or the guilt.
Or the guilt of being physically drawn to men who they logically know would make detrimental long-term partners.
She is simultaneously seeking a stable partnership and a high-status genetic marker, and the data shows these two things often do not reside in the same person.
The dual processing is in constant, unavoidable conflict. The modern desire is for a stable, reciprocal partnership dictated by conscious values, while the primitive desire is for a mate displaying high-risk, high-reward genetic markers dictated by survival instinct.
And this tension is unavoidable because both desires are hardwired.
One through millions of years of evolution, the other through conscious social learning.
Before we reach our final synthesis, there is one last piece of data that provides crucial context about how the environment influences which system wins.
Okay.
This study used a simulated matching outcome based on the technical Gale-Shapley algorithm, looking at the role of unobservables.
This provides a critical insight into the impact of search friction on mate selection. The researchers simulated matching outcomes in the online environment, defining the unobservable utility component as things like...
What are we talking about here?
Things like shared interests, personality traits, emotional connection, humor, everything we can't quantify by income or height. The deep stuff.
The things that make a relationship work. And what happened when they removed those deep, unobservable personal factors from the matching simulation?
When they removed the role of the unobservable utility component from preferences, the resulting match correlations along easily observable, high-status attributes, looks, income, education, increased significantly.
And what did that look like?
Crucially, the simulated match patterns then strongly resembled the assortative mating patterns found in traditional offline marriages.
That's a profound conclusion. What does it tell us about the difference between online and offline attraction?
The interpretation is that the environment matters tremendously. Search frictions in traditional offline markets, like meeting someone in a noisy bar or only having brief social interactions, may force partners to rely predominantly on easily observable high-status traits simply because they cannot access deeper personality information quickly.
So you're in a loud room.
You're in a loud room. Physical attractiveness and immediate dominance cues are the only reliable fast filters for genetic value.
Whereas online
dating, by removing that search friction and allowing for profiles that describe personality, makes it easier for unobservable factors like shared interests or compatible personalities to play a more important role.
So if James had met his girlfriend in a loud, crowded place, his unobservable traits, his kindness, stability, and patience might have been completely overlooked.
They might have been invisible.
Forcing her reliance solely on the bartender's observable high-status cues, like dominance or physical charisma. The environment dictates whether instinct, observables, or reason, unobservables, gets the first and loudest say.
To synthesize everything we have investigated across evolution, neurobiology, and these massive data sets, the discomfort and confusion people feel when attraction defies logic, it stems from a fundamental, unavoidable clash.
Yeah.
This clash is between deeply rooted, gene-specified reward systems, our ancient survival instincts, and the modern conscious reasoning we use to navigate civilized life.
We've seen the evidence at every level. Darwinian selection establishing the female choice mechanism, neurobiology showing how the orbitofrontal cortex misinterprets modern dominance as ancestral competence, and digital analytics quantifying the immense economic exchange rate for genetic traits like height and looks.
And the conclusion is always the same.
The core finding remains consistent. Attraction is largely an evolutionary equation, not a choice, a virtue, or a modern negotiation of partnership ideals.
That is the essential insight. The data shows that the core red line remains. Instinct trumps nurture when it comes to raw, immediate attraction.
And people's actions show it.
People's actions, quantified across millions of users, reveal preferences that align far more closely with evolutionary predictions of status and genetic fitness than with consciously articulated preferences for kindness or stability. We are all operating on biological programming that values genetic success and resource acquisition first.
Understanding this deep-seated biological programming is the map that explains the territory you are actually in. When you stop trying to solve a biological equation with contemporary social logic, when you recognize that the chaos of the bartender is simply activating a primal valuation system, you can finally navigate the modern mating landscape based on its realities, moving past the idealized reality often sold in social narratives.